We're now going to cover section 4 of chapter 1 on the body's levels of organization. And the learning objectives for this particular section are to list the characteristics common to all living organisms, describing the levels of organization in the human body, and comparing the organ systems of the human body, very generally. Specifics will come in later chapters. With that, properties that are common to all living organisms. Organization, all organisms exhibit a very complex structure and order. Metabolism is the sum total of all the chemical and technically physiological reactions that occur within the body. Sum total of all of them. So when people say metabolism, a lot of people talk about increasing metabolism or lowering your metabolism, but they don't know they fully understand the depth that we're referring to when it comes to metabolism from a metabolic standpoint. It's not as simple as to say that something will have a long-term versus short-term effect without fully understanding the intricacies of the form and function. From an anabolic standpoint, small molecules join to form larger ones. And from a catabolic standpoint, or catabolism, you actually have larger molecules that are broken down into smaller ones. Okay, people often refer to anabolic and catabolic reactions, right? Every reaction that's occurring is either going to be anabolic or catabolic at a given moment as far as what aspect of a reaction within a given process is occurring. Growth and development. Organisms assimilate or come to bring together materials from the environment and grow and develop, right? Here we see a little diagram showing subatomic particles forming atoms, your atoms being your hydrogen, oxygen, and so on from the chemistry table, right? And those atoms form together, form the molecules like H2O, right? And those molecules form macromolecules or larger, more complex molecules, and they create organelles. And the groups of organelles form cells. Cells form together tissue, and tissues together form organs. Organs all together make up the organ system, and then the organ systems all together make up the organism. Okay, that's our general level of organization for a living human being, and certainly from a very general standpoint, any living thing. Okay. Characteristics that describe living things, properties that are common to all living organisms. Responsiveness, the ability to sense and react to stimuli. How well they do it, that's going to depend upon a lot of things, right? Regulation, the ability to adjust internal bodily functions to accommodate environment changes, how efficient that regulation is, how effective it is. Homeostasis is the ability to maintain body structure and function. That is an area we'll be covering extensively over the course of this entire course. Talking about very lightly here, chapter 1, but it's actually in section 7. We'll talk about homeostasis a little bit more. But the ability to maintain structure and function, generally speaking, people talk about homeostasis from a general standpoint at a given moment, typically talking more about nervous system, endocrine system, but blood vessels, certainly blood flow, all the numerous factors that affect homeostasis. Reproduction, producing new cells for growth, maintenance, and repair for sex hormones playing a role there. Sex cells or gametes or gametes, some people say, can develop into new organisms. The view from the simplest to most complex. From a standpoint of chemical level, atoms and molecules being the most simple, then going to the cellular level and cells, basic units of life. Tissue level, just like we mentioned before, from cells to tissues, similar cells performing common functions to the organs, the organ systems, and the organism, or we can go the opposite from complex to simple. Okay, that simple breakdown you must know. Pretty much everything we're covering in here you must know. That said, it's a little very similar breakdown here. I just incorporated more than one animation for you with atoms and molecules forming macromolecules into the organelles, like the Golgi apparatus for the cell, and then the cellular level cells helping to form tissues, epithelial tissue, very common tissue, and lead to understanding great depth as the course moves forward, let alone connective tissue. And at that, from the standpoint of epithelial tissue and connective tissue you're finding in the small intestine, and that small intestine being an organ that's part of basically that entire digestive system, right, which includes the liver, stomach, gallbladder, and large and small intestine for the digestive system, which is one organ system within the entire organism, which is the human being, right? And so the systems you're going to need to understand very lightly in the very beginning. You need to know basics of all these systems. Things we're going to cover very briefly here. You should be able to explain briefly each system and a couple of items about each one of these systems. Okay, great detail. They're going to be covered later this semester for the integumentary system. There's couple chapters on tissues and integumentary system. Skeletal system is actually 3 chapters. Muscular system is a couple chapters. Nervous system, there's 5 chapters. That's how much is going on in the nervous system for us. Endocrine system will be probably going to be the first chapter covered in the second semester. So after the midwinter break or the winter break, right? And then cardiovascular system has a couple chapters, has 2 or 3 chapters, I believe. Lymphatic system, respiratory system, urinary system, digestive system all have, I believe, 1 chapter each. The number of chapters designated for each particular area does not necessarily delineate how important something is or how complex something is. It's just the basic standpoint of basic function and form, whereas the actual intricacies of relationships in terms of how it affects the entire organism or what area field you're going to study, each one of these is highly complex. But we're going to talk about the basics, and in order to do that, that's the way they kind of broke down the chapters for how much time is spent in each particular area. Okay. That said, looking here at each individual area, we could first here at our integumentary system with tissues. You have the hair being tissue, skin and associated glands, toenails. All these help provide protection. They regulate body temperature, right? Essentially pH playing a role with that as well. So there's a site of cutaneous receptors, your skin layer or your outer layers, all having receptors at the root of your hair as opposed to the hair itself, right? Be able to sense or information or obtain information, basically sending that to the brain and spinal cord, talking about the nervous system a little bit here after this, and basically sending efferent information to the brain spinal cord, and brain spinal cord and sending afferent information back to the peripheral nervous system to get information to determine how to respond or to give you a sense of touch and feel, right? And that said, the same integumentary system helps synthesize vitamin D, crucial for life, right? Getting from the sun, helps prevent water loss, which is obviously very crucial in terms of sweat and trying to cool the body and heat the body when necessary. Then moving over to the skeletal system, that's our structural system, our support, our skull, and part of the primary bones, the sternum, your ribs, the cartilage between your upper limb bones, part of the periphery, your limbs or upper appendages, if you will, and then we have the vertebrae, your spine here, and the sacrum, the base of your spine, essentially. Then we have our lower limb bones and our knee joint, and we'll get much more extensive. As I said, there are 3 chapters on the skeleton later this semester, probably the first couple months. Okay, but provides support and protection. It's a site of hemopoiesis for blood cell production, bone marrow, right, within the bone, kind of crucial. Stores calcium and phosphorus. Calcium is a very important neurotransmitter for most reactions within the body. Calcium plays a role in helping determine information moving from one place to another. And it provides that same skeletal system provides sites for ligament and muscle attachments, kind of helping us keep together, helping us move more efficiently, helping us be able to support that stable system and supporting our movement system and stability system as well as the stability system, which is really the skeleton, but muscles also help provide that stability there. But typically speaking, we tend to refer to skeletal muscle as more producing the movement itself, right? You're not going to move without a muscle being able to pull on a tendon, and a tendon then really pulls on the bone, right? And ligaments provide more structure and whatnot. That's part of the muscular system from a general standpoint, more connective tissue, really integumentary system. It generates heat, of course. Muscles generate heat when muscles contract, which plays a role in our metabolism, right, among other things. Nervous system, one of our primary regulatory systems or controls along with the endocrine system. And that's really the last section of several chapters we're going to be covering this semester. Several chapters, our last essentially few weeks of the semester will be on the nervous system. And it's the regulatory system that basically controls muscles, some glands, responds to sensory stimuli, helps control other systems of the body. It's also responsible for consciousness because it's your brain, right? The spinal cord for intelligence, memory, and basically sensing information and helping the body determine what to do in a given situation. And the systems that I'm going to cover very briefly, but you should have some basic understanding of, because they're going to cover more in depth the second semester, not this first semester here. But looking first at the endocrine system, and a lot of people will refer to, a lot of professionals will refer to the neuroendocrine system, not just nervous or endocrine, because they're so intimately related in terms of regulatory function and controls. Okay, and the Endocrine system, we're talking about numerous glands. Here showing the hypothalamus, basically the base of the brain there, pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid gland here in your neck, thymus, more in the chest. You should be able to identify these locations, certainly from a very basic standpoint, each one of these diagrams. Adrenal gland, more in the midsection, the pancreas and the kidney, in that digestive system area, right? And the testes, the reproductive system area. And of course, they're all glands and cell clusters, which basically help secrete hormones. And those hormones or neurotransmitters are often secreted from the same glands that stimulate other glands to stimulate hormones, and helping metabolism, growth, homeostasis, maintaining body composition, blood volume, digestive processes, controlling reproductive functions, just about everything, right? Pretty much everything. Cardiovascular system will be covered again in the second semester, but you should have some basic understanding. We're talking about the heart and the blood vessels. From the standpoint of the heart pumps blood, delivering oxygen and nutrients to the body via the blood vessels, right? Arteries going away from the heart, veins coming toward, but they're much more complex than that. Arteries going to arterioles, and then breaking down eventually into capillaries, and of course the capillaries passing across and eventually going to venules and veins, coming back to the heart, and that process continues, right? That said, that's in order to distribute, for helping energy, but also distributing hormones, getting nutrients across barriers, gases, and picking up waste, right? And then our lymphatic system is part of our immune system. It transports and filters lymph, our interstitial fluid that is collected, and interstitial fluid is a significant fluid component within the body. There's a lot of it, plays a huge role in balancing systems. And that lymphatic system are basically substances are transported through the lymph vessels, and it can participate in the immune system response, plays a great role. You may find at times when you're in a heightened state of stress that lymph nodes can swell because the immune system response has been stimulated, and on times of stress, and any time of stress, that can happen. Respiratory system is basically responsible for exchange of gases, right? Basically, when air or gases actually air enters into oxygen enters into the lungs. There's a transport, and there has to be an efficient way of making sure we can have efficiency in utilization of oxygen. And we'll talk about various aspects of that more toward the second semester near the end. But essentially, we're talking about the exchange of gases of oxygen and carbon dioxide, essentially, from a very general standpoint, helping between the blood for the body system to make use of oxygen, and then to expel, or hopefully expel properly, carbon dioxide in an efficient manner, and us understanding better how we do that to not overstress the system, but to get enough stress, like so many other systems, to gain benefit and to improve rather than to just stay the same, because nothing stays the same. Either breaks down, catabolic, or builds, anabolic. And then a little bit more, because there are more systems, with the urinary system. Kidneys and the ureter and basically the urinary bladder, urethra, all playing a role in filtering the blood, helping to remove waste products and biologically active molecules, and it concentrates waste products in the form of urine, right? And how often you urinate, and how your urine color, basically the efficiency in which the system interacts, all plays a role in our overall health and well-being, and understanding the urinary system is crucial in that regard. The digestive system, referring at the beginning for when your intake of food, to the salivary glands playing a role, the oral cavity, the pharynx down to the throat, to the esophagus, and then liver, stomach, large intestine, and small intestine. Should understand basic breakdown here. You'll do that in the lab a little bit as well, but you should have that basic recognition at this point at least. And we're talking about the mechanical and chemical breakdown of food, digestion for food, absorbing nutrients, and expelling waste products. And then you have the male reproductive system versus the female reproductive system, and both producing sex cells that are playing a role, sperm for the male, and basically oocytes for the female, and female hormones, estrogen and progesterone for the male, testosterone, and basically between the two, you should actually understand the basic differences in their anatomy. The mammary glands for the female, ductus deferens, prostate gland, and the general location. We're not going to cover in great detail closeness just yet, but that will be coming in more in second semester, but it'll be showing up a little bit in lab down the road too. The urethra, testes, scrotum, seminal vesicle, epididymis, and the penis. And for the women, the ovary, the uterus, uterine tube, the vagina and external genitalia, the clitoris, and the labia. Okay? So, what did you learn? What's it all mean? If an organism is responsive, how does this characteristic relate to the survival of the organism? That's what you want. High responsiveness, quick response. A lot of people are really excited to tell you they can take in something very hot and it doesn't bother them. It's not necessarily a good thing. They can put themselves their hands on some hot object or they can take more pain. Those things aren't necessarily more efficient or more effective for the body. In many ways, that should be negative. Having more responsiveness and a heightened response can actually be more beneficial. Now that depends, like so many factors. It depends. Does a higher level of organization contain all the levels beneath it? You should be able to explain that. Which organ system is responsible for filtering the blood or removing the waste products of the blood in the form of urine? You should be able to break that one down. We just talked about it, right? Those basics you should be able to do at this point, and that is section 4, chapter 1.